Welcome to Am Writing Fantasy. I'm Autumn,
And I'm Jesper.
and we are here today to talk a little bit about, a very important topic. But before we get into that, we wanted to give a update on things that we've got going on in our projects. I know Jesper has been handling some important writing for both of us.
Yeah, indeed. We thought it might be a good idea because we record these videos like once a month, or also, of course, it's also on the podcast feed. But either if you're listening on podcast or watching the video now, we thought it would be a good idea when we record these joint sessions once a month to just start out by giving like a 5-minute update on sort of what we're working on to give you a general impression of what we're doing rather than only covering topics. So as Autumn said there, I've been pretty busy for quite a while with writing a book on how to plot a novel. I'm probably getting close to 70% done with the first draft at this point in time. Then it has to go back to Autumn for her editing. But the idea basically behind writing a book on plotting, other than I sort of just like getting the processes written down. I've done the same thing with other books before. But the other idea with it is that going forward in 2019, Autumn and I are going to write books together, fiction books. So we sort of needed to sort out a joint plotting process so that we would have the same approach on how to plot. And I'm sure once I shift off the first draft to Autumn, she might have some inputs and thoughts about something she want to change, but that's fine. That's part of the process here. So that book is currently, I need to finish that one up and then we can move on from there.
Yes. And part of the process of that one, not only do I get to handle the edits, I get to handle some graphics. So I've got to be working on some images that go in it. Since I have the, besides being a writer, I get to handle the graphic side of life. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, indeed. And then we also have like this huge project that we've been working on for 2 years or something. And Carolyn, maybe you just want to give a status update on that.
Yeah, so we're working on a new course for Am Writing Fantasy that is really exciting, and I don't think we've been building it for 2 years, but I think the process of actively creating it has been going on for close to a year now, if not a little over, and that is a world-building course that it's amazing and it is huge, and I cannot wait until we manage to finish it up and get it out into the world. But we're just at the beginning of the process where we're finishing up the modules and we'll soon start recording them. So it's getting closer and I'm really excited how it's shaping up and really impressed at how big it is. I thought the Ultimate Fantasy Writer's Guide was big, but this one's pretty amazing and awesome and huge, and it's a big project to handle together. I'm thrilled to not be doing this one alone because I don't know if I could have handled it.
Yeah, and you kind of want me way back when we started that building a course would be a massive endeavor to embark on, and I was like, yeah, I'm sure it is, but it can't be that bad. But I must admit it is.
You're in the thick of it. It's tough, but I don't think a lot of people appreciate what goes into them. It's more than writing a book. It's huge. It's fun though, and it is really cool when it's all done and you have it like set up on the website and it's working.
Yeah.
To be able to share that with people. But exactly. It is definitely a huge pile to undertake and take care of.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and of course then, if you then look at it, so as part of developing the world building course, we are also then developing the world that we are going to set for our future fiction. So basically we use the development of our joint world as examples in the course itself so that people can sort of follow along, and then we're building our own stuff in parallel. And then if you merge that together with the plotting book, then then we have a process in place for start writing some fiction. And then I have no idea when in 2019 we're going to get into this, but it's definitely not on this side of summer. But maybe if we're lucky, I don't know, towards the end of the year, but then we will get seriously into fiction. Once we have the plotting book out of the way, and once we have the course done, we're going to get seriously into some fiction production and start writing a lot of books in this new world. So that's the aim.
Yeah, like we're not busy at all. We happen to be YouTubing, podcasting, writing, drawing, building a course. I have some writing I'm doing on the side as well, with a new release coming out hopefully in May and possibly one in June. So no, we have married. We're both married, have lives, jobs. So yeah, we just fit it in. We have a time traveling device, I think, that we forgot to tell everyone about to get it all done.
that would be nice.
It would be. Except that we'd be tired.
Yeah, but I think I would just use it to get a bit more hours a day so I could get some sleep. That would be awesome.
Yes, I remember when my old coworkers asked when they found out I was writing a book, and then they found out it was like my 4th or 5th one. They asked how I did it, and I just told them I was a vampire and I didn't sleep. And I'm sticking to that story. You have to disprove it. So
yeah, indeed. Well, okay, so maybe we need to get into the topic of the day, but actually, yes. I think I'm curious to know, for you either listening on podcast or the ones watching the YouTube video, I'm curious to know if sort of a status update like the one we just had here in the beginning, once a month, if that's something that you like. So please let us know in comment sections and whatnot about what you think about that, because I'm actually curious to know. But what are we going to talk about today?
Oh, the extremely exciting, sexy topic of backing up your work in progress.
Yeah, and data protection.
That's right.
Just to make it even more sexy.
Yes, data, that word is just, the top of the erotica fiction there.
Yeah.
But it is important.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? I mean, it's admittedly, it's not the most sexy topic that we could cover, but I've just, over the last couple of weeks here, been transitioning from one computer to another because my old computer was getting old. So I was concerned that it was going to crash on me. So I transitioned over to a new computer. And then in the process, I put quite a lot of thought into data protection and backups. I already had quite some systems in place for it, but I honed it a bit more when I transitioned over to my new computer. And then I thought, well, all the stuff that I just went through in terms of getting my stuff onto a new computer, maybe that would be relevant for other people too, because I am going to go on a limb and just guess that most of you do not have this stuff under control. So I think it's a good topic.
It is a great topic, and I think even if you think you have it under control, there's something you need to stop and think about it and make sure you really do. And if you're really following the strategies that you think you are, is it really backing up to the cloud, and where you're backing it up in the cloud, if that's what you do, is it safe? I know you were mentioning I've actually lost a computer overnight literally it was a Mac, and I opened it up and it was dead to the world. And so I've lost files that way. And I had an iPad. I used to do all my writing off of an iPad, which, it was on Pages, pretty simple. And we're talking of iPad generation 1. So we're talking about a while ago, before Apple did the cloud, before all of that. So everything was just on my iPad, and I had a failed update to my iOS, and I lost 10 chapters. And I thought I was updating it and backing up. At that point, I had to email it to myself to do updates and things like that, because it was just on my computer, on my iPad. And we did everything we could to recover it. And I really think that was actually book 2, my second novel, Roll of Fire, that I was working on. And it was probably chapters 3 to 13. And I'll tell you, that is a make or break point, I think, for authors, that if you can recover, I don't recommend you testing yourself to see if you really have what it takes to be an author for the long haul. But that really tested, am I passionate about this? Am I going to sit down and rewrite 10 chapters and keep going on book 2, or am I just gonna burn the whole thing and walk away from it? And I don't want anyone else to have to go there. That was a horrible, horrible day. I have some old files as well that I think have just gotten lost in transition from book covers that I can't find the originals of anymore. So backup, this is important.
Yeah, it is. So I tried to, in preparation for this conversation, I've written down 4 different things that I think is very important that everybody should make sure that you do and you have under control. And this was the 4 different things that I also implemented, as I said, when I transitioned from my old computer to the new one. Some of them I already had in place, some of them I didn't. So I basically wrote them down and thought that I'll share them here. So I don't know, Autumn, if you just want me to start going through them one by one, or how do we do this best?
Yeah, you go ahead and start. I'll add to it, and I'll see if they match what my recommendations would be. So let's go for it.
Oh, okay, so now it will show how uncoordinated we are. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so the first one is a pretty simple thing, but it goes in the vein of data protection. And I didn't do this on my old computer, even though every single computer has the opportunity to do it, but I didn't. And that is, of course, that you should set up your computer so that it has login credentials, meaning that you cannot just open the computer and start working. There has to be a password. So if your computer ever got stolen, nobody can just open it and get access to the files. And for some stupid reason, I didn't do that with my old computer, but of course I've done that with my new one. But that's sort of a no-brainer that quite a few people don't even do. So if you haven't done that, I would say go ahead and activate that right now on your computer.
Of course, you're not telling everyone that your original computer was a desktop, so it didn't leave your house, but now you've moved on to laptops. But I agree. Yeah. Having the, I know my Mac Pro, I definitely have a little login password. And even my phone, and I will add, though, just a quick update on data protection, too. Include your social media profiles. I read a fantastic article about people losing access to like Twitter and Facebook and stuff, and all you have to do is do a second level validation. You know, think of that with your social media as well as your computer. Make sure that there's login credentials, that it is you, that someone can't steal your email address, that someone can't steal everything on your computer, especially if you travel a lot with your laptop, going into those cafes. Consider all those safety precautions, especially when you tap into Wi-Fi that you don't know who's generating it. That's access to your computer.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and of course, yeah, that's correct that my previous computer was a desktop rather than a laptop. But even a desktop, you know, somebody can break into your house and unplug it and take it. And then go somewhere else and plug it in and try to get into your data. So absolutely, make sure you have those login credentials, 2-step verification, like Autumn is talking about. Use that for social media. And then I would also say, don't have your browser remembering passwords automatically. Yes, it's a bit of a pain. Every time you go to some place, you have to grab the password again and then log in. Well, I'm used to it by now that I always do that. But having your browser remembering the password is not very smart either.
No, that's very true. It's so easy to do that and accept that. And maybe if it's a truly low profile website, but for your important ones, like PayPal is one of my favorite ones, don't ever let your computer save your PayPal password. But Amazon, think about it. This is where your books are. You're uploading all your books, all your files. Someone could access that. Make sure you don't have it saved. Everything is there. Yeah. Watch where you save your things. And don't save your passwords under a file called passwords. That's not a good one either.
No, and maybe that's the other thing. So that's number 3. So we talked about login credentials. We talked about browsers not remembering your passwords for you, and maybe what you just mentioned there is then my number 3, and that is encrypting your data.
Yes.
So what that means is that when I have, for example, my password file, it's basically just an Excel sheet where I have all my passwords in it. And then I use a program to encrypt the files. So it basically encrypts them so that you cannot get into them unless you have the password. And here is, of course, the scary story related to that is that when I did that, for some weird reason, and I still don't understand why, it asks you when you implement or when you install the software in the first place. It's the software I use is a piece of software called AXCrypt. I'll put a link in the description and in the show notes so that you guys can find it there. It's free, and you can just download it and start using it, and it will encrypt your files. And it's so easy to use. You can just right click on a file and click encrypt, and it's done. It's so easy. And the same thing if you want to open it, you right click and you ask to unencrypt it, and then it will ask for your password. And that is, of course, a password that you should not write down anywhere. You need to remember that password. And that's exactly what I did. So first off, I established what my password was going to be. And then I went to open my password file because I needed to start accessing things. And I put it in my password, and then it said, wrong password. And I was like, what? Because I was 100% sure it was the right password. I still don't know why. Luckily enough, I had the password file on my old computer still. I had not deleted it yet, so I could recover it from there and then re-encrypt it. And now everything is working, but for some reason there was something wrong. It's working now without a problem. But this piece of software does tell you the first time you encrypt it that remember this password because it cannot be broken. So it encrypts the file so that there's no way to recover the file. If you don't have the password, forget it. And that's, of course, the way it should be. Because if somebody steals your computer and gets access to your password file, they should be able to hack it. It should be impossible to reset a password or anything. And that's how it's used. So AXCrypt is what it's called. It's free to use, and you can download it. As I said, I'll add a link to it so that you can find it from there. If you're some other options before on my previous computer, I used something called Lockbox, which is maybe in a way a bit easier because you can sort of lump all your files into the lockbox and then just lock it. Then you don't have to unencrypt each file like AXCrypt does. But the problem is that Lockbox is actually not encrypting the files. It's just putting it behind a password. So it is not as secure as AXCrypt. So there is that to be mindful. And there is other software out there. I did a quick Google search before this recording. There was BitLocker, TrueCrypt, VeraCrypt. There is all kinds of stuff. I have not used any of those myself, but just to mention it, there is a lot of options that you can explore if you want.
I know on my Mac I use Keychain Access, and it's sort of the same idea. It blocks all of my master passwords into one spot that only I have to put in a password to have access to. So yeah, and it is bad when you suddenly think, that is my password, and why isn't it working?
It's my scary.
Yeah, your caps lock key, did I mistype something? Yeah, it's never a good feeling.
No, indeed. Yeah, so basically what I then have is I have all the files encrypted. Mm-hmm. So the ones that are on the computer itself sits behind the login credentials. So those are password protected there. But then what I try to do is I try to make sure that I have all my files in at least 3 different physical locations. In my case, I actually have 4. But every file is in the same version of the file in 4 different places at once. So how do I do that? So one thing is, of course, it's on the computer itself. That's obvious. On the hard disk, sitting behind the login credentials, so you can't get to it unless at least you can log into the computer. Of course, that one could potentially be broken. I guess if you're a hacker, you can get into that. But all right. Then the second place I have it is I have an external hard drive, which is also lying here at home. So once a week, I back up the entire computer onto the external hard drive. So the entire computer is there on the external hard drive in a full backup. I use a program called Acronis to do that. I'll also put a link to that so you can find it if you're interested. And none of these links are affiliated in any way, so don't worry about that. I'm just explaining what I'm using, so I'm not gaining anything from mentioning these different types of software. But Acronis is, of course, a paid service. But the reason why I use Acronis is that it is the only program that I have been able to find. There's probably others, but it's the only one that I've been able to find that takes a 100% exact mirror image of your entire computer. So if the computer breaks, I could go out and I can buy a new computer and I can install Acronis, and then I can ask it to restore, and the entire computer will come back to the new piece of hardware exactly the way it is. So Acronis is wonderful in that way. And it is that program that I use to transfer my entire computer onto the external hard drive, because it has a program for it. You just click a button and it does it, and that's it. So it just runs in the background, and you can work on other things while it does it. So it's very easy. And then the other thing that Acronis also does is that it also takes a cloud backup of your computer and puts it on Acronis' servers. So basically, my entire computer is on their servers as well. So I have it now on my own computer, on an external hard drive, and in the Acronis cloud. And the Acronis cloud is so wonderful that it actually backs up every 5 minutes. So every 5 minutes, every change I make, it backs it up onto the cloud. So everything is there. That only leaves number 4 thing, because right now, basically what I have is the computer and the external hard drive, it's both in the same physical location. It's in my house. And then I have the cloud, but I'm missing the 3rd physical separate location to have my things on, because if the house breaks down or burns or something, I only have the cloud left. But then that's where this little fellow comes in. So this is a 128 gigabyte USB stick that I actually have on my keychain, because then when I leave the house, this one goes with me. And on this one, all the files are encrypted. So that if I lose this one and somebody plugs it in, they're only getting encrypted files. So you cannot use any of the files on this unless you know the password for them. And the thing is that this one is, apart from it being 128 gigabytes, so it's very big, but apart from that, it is metal. So that when I carry it around in my pocket, it's not some plastic stuff that will break. So it can take all the bending and whatnot that happens in your, well, of course, on the podcast, you can't see it. But I'll put a link to this one in the description field as well. So you can just click there and then go and check it. But this is then the 4th place. So now I have everything in 4 places, whereas 3 of the 4 places is physically different locations, all of them. So it should never, ever happen that I cannot get all my data back, or even if my entire computer breaks down, I can get it. I can just find a new one and restore the whole thing. And it probably won't take me more than an hour.
That is impressive. I think I have to do better at separating where some of my backups are. And actually, you would like, my husband has a metal USB key, sort of like yours, but it is also behind, it's a special one that's also locked. And if you enter the password wrong too many times, it will self-destruct.
Okay.
Which, that kind of paranoids me, but at the same time, if you really want to make sure if you really have something sensitive, if that's like all your tax information or something, it's a pretty good place to store it. So I did, like, your method is a great way for a PC. So I run off of a Mac, and I mentioned I used to have a Mac Air, and it died. And of course, Macs are neat because they have something called Time Machine, and you can back up to different areas. So I back up every couple of days. Every time I think I have a big files, I do back up to this one. This is my Time Machine. It is a mirror image of everything that is on my computer. So that keeps everything going really well. And I also, though, as a writer, since a lot of my stuff is done in Scrivener, I make sure that, without even thinking of it, I have Scrivener backed up, not just to my computer, but it backs up to Dropbox. So it is already backed up to the cloud. So I make sure that all my important stuff backs up. And for me, though, one of the biggest problems is, as my old IT person, when I had my full-time day job, used to say is I'm a power user. Doesn't that sound so fantastic? I'm a power user. It means I utilize the resources of my Mac so hard. I am constantly fighting to try to keep 20 gig free so I can run Photoshop, because I have so many files and things going on. So I actually have a terabyte drive, which is half full. So I have 2 terabytes of data on this. It's supposedly shared with my husband, but that is, I do not keep a shadow copy, but I keep a lot of my primary files. If something happened to this, I would have what's on this, but I actually do have files on this that only exist here, and that does make me nervous. It does make me nervous. But when you have 2 terabytes worth of data, it is hard to back it up. But I will say we spent money on this one. This is waterproof, dustproof, shockproof. It's everything but theft proof. So this thing is under lock and key and watch. We have a safe we keep it in unless we're actively using it like at home. So we do keep a really good job. And then, like I said, I have everything backed up to both my drives. I have a backup of my important files on the cloud, but I don't have the USB anymore, and that's partially because I have so many large files. I have a 128 gig hard drive, and like I said, I am constantly, at least once a week, I am cleaning off files just to maintain 20 to 30 gigabytes free, because I am constantly using and creating so many big video and Photoshop files. Photoshop files use huge amounts of space and data. So for me, it's hard to maintain that workflow where I'm keeping it in another place. I actually had to update my Dropbox where I now have a terabyte. I'm paying for Dropbox, which I swore I was never going to do, but I needed that terabyte of data. But the problem is it's there, but unless I unsync it from my computer, I'm storing a terabyte of data, trying to store it on my computer too. So it is no win situation. This is the reason I bought this is because I had lost my Mac Air and I wanted to get a bigger hard drive, but this was all that was available. And if you're a writer who just had all your files die overnight, you kind of freak out and you go and buy the computer that they have in stock that will work and not want to wait 3 or 4 days for shipping. But yeah, if I had another, $1,000 to drop on a laptop, I'd probably buy one with a bigger hard drive. But it did work out, and I will say the first time when my Mac Air died and I moved to the Mac Pro, the Time Machine worked, and my Mac Pro underwent a recall where they had to wipe the hard drive, which was terrifying. And once again, the Time Machine did work. We had to do it in stages because I had so much data. But, a couple hours later, my husband had to do it because I was so impatient and so worried it was going to fail. And he was the only one with a cool head at the time. But once he got everything moved over, it's like it didn't go away. So I will give Mac a thumbs up for the Time Machine, that they make it so easy to restore, but you have to remember to back it up. That is the important thing. If you don't physically plug in your Time Machine and say, please back up my laptop, it won't do it. And I had been bad when I lost my Mac Air. I think it had been 3 or 4 days since I had backed up. And so I did lose, half a page of writing. I lost a half a page of this and a half a page of that, maybe 2 Photoshop files. So even when you think you're being good, it's always Murphy's Law. It's always going to happen just when you don't want it to. And it's a bad feeling. To me, there was nothing worse than opening up my laptop and trying not to hyperventilate and to go quietly, calmly through all of the, this isn't working. Let me try this. Let me try this. Let me try this. And I gave it to my husband. I said, please, you make things work. I'm the destroyer in my family. If you want to see if something is going to withstand amazingly extreme conditions, I look so gentle and innocent, don't I? I will destroy it. Nothing has survived my life more than 3 months, except for my husband. It's amazing.
And your dog.
And my dog. My dog has done very well. They are somehow indestructible. It's amazing. Thank goodness. But, I had him go through all the same steps. We used his computer to check things online and to realize it was hopeless, to take it to an expert and say, yeah, it's dead. Like, they were all chipper about it too. Yeah, wow, we've never seen one die like this before.
Great.
Thanks, name it after me. It's just horrible, and it leaves you emotionally. I think sometimes the emotional toll of it is just terrifying to think that was my part. That's my life. I don't want to see it die and go away, but it can. So back up your files, because those are what's important, not the physical computer that you're working on, because that can change, and it should be able to change, especially when it gets 10 years old and is a little outdated.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's sort of the bottom line here, is that as authors, the files is our livelihood, and if you don't show it that kind of respect, then you're not operating it as a very serious business. I don't know how many real serious businesses that that don't care about backing up their files and stuff like that. That you should be backing up your files, and you should make sure that you're also, because one thing is that it's waterproof and all that stuff, but a disk failure can happen.
Oh yeah.
And if the disk fails, you're done.
It is.
And unless you have it in separate places so that you can just restore it, then well, you have a big problem. And that's why I really like the sort of automatic backup system. So like Acronis runs on my computer, backs it up automatically every 5 minutes. I don't have to touch it. The only thing I do is, of course, every time I'm, let's say, done for the writing for the day, when I close my files and save them, I then pull them from my computer, and then I pull a copy over on the USB and encrypt it, just so that I know it's here as well. But other than that, I already know that Acronis already took its own backup of it. So just at the end of the day, I just pull them over and onto the USB drive here, and then I know I'm safe, right? So, and then on top of that, I have the like once a week update going on to the external drive. So all in all, it is not complicated. It's not a lot of work. It of course takes a bit of getting used to remembering to put them on the USB every time. And then of course the fact that you need to pull the passwords out of your password file every time you need to access something. And you have the two-step verification, so that it takes a bit more work to log into things, but it is well worth it from the data protection point of view. So I would say just get used to it and make it part of your routine. I don't even think much about it. It's just how I do things. But at least I know, even if I have a computer crash or if somebody steals my computer, they'll have a hard time trying to get access to the stuff that I have on it. So, and that's basically the aim of it.
No, I think that's a good point. I think you definitely convinced me that some of the book files, like I mentioned, I think somewhere between switching laptops at some point, I lost one of the original cover files to one of my books because I create all my own covers. And so if I ever change it, there's some, I have the image without the text, but besides that, I pretty much can't change anything on the image ever again unless I want to recreate it. So knowing that, I think I will probably be taking some of the important files off of my terabyte and probably putting it into my terabyte on Dropbox and just unsyncing it just so they sit there and I know that they're there. As long as I keep paying for Dropbox, they won't take them away from me, but they can just sit there in the cloud and at least be safe. That will probably work for me.
Yeah, so I think that's all I had to say, and hopefully it helps in terms of understanding how you can ensure your data and also making sure that you back it up in a proper fashion. And as I said, I will place links to Acronis, AXCrypt, and this USB key in the description field and in the show notes for you listening on the podcast. And then hopefully, even if you don't use these, you don't have to use my system, of course, but at least put something in place so that you have things in at least 3 different physical places at all times. That is important. And then put those passwords in place and don't have your computer auto remembering it and so forth. So I think that's the gospel for now, isn't it?
I think so. Those are great words of advice. And even if you only manage to do 2 out of 3 places, you're still doing better, but go for the 3. You can do it.
Yeah, it's not that hard. So, all right. Well, I guess we'll leave you with that, and I guess we'll just say see you next Monday.
Yeah. See you next Monday.